We talked last week about spiritual practices and about just how many of them there really are. In fact, I was looking on Unity's new website, and they list many spiritual practices. Forgiveness is one of those. And they say this about forgiveness. Forgiveness is the act of releasing ourselves from the bondage of an ongoing negative connection, an ongoing negative connection. Forgiveness resurrects our peace of mind from the perils of victimhood and releases our negative judgments. I was also hunting around in my books for wisdom about forgiveness, and I remembered a book by Debbie Ford called the 21 Day Consciousness Cleanse. It's a really good book. And she says this about forgiveness. You must forgive because your unforgiveness and resentments can end up defining who you are, causing you to remain in a cycle of negativity and victimhood. But despite all this, I think everyone agrees that forgiveness can be powerful, but forgiveness is not the most spiritual practice, or not the most popular spiritual practice, because it means we have to go and dredge up the yucky stuff, right? And so we naturally want to elevate and think about all the positive juju, the highest stuff, all of the things that Esther Hicks talks about, and just we want to be elevated. But in order to go and do forgiveness work, sometimes we have to go back and look at things that we really, with every fiber of our being, have made a habit of suppressing. So I will just acknowledge that. And let me also say at the outset that forgiveness is not about saying that what someone else may have done to you was right. It doesn't condone someone else's behavior. And you have to decide when the timing of forgiveness is right for you in a particular situation. This week, I decided to take the advice of someone that about a year ago said to me, he said, David, there's this awesome practice that I have made up. And he said, write down all of your unforgivenesses, if that's a word, unforgivenesses. Write down all of your resentments, your grudges in a journal and keep it by your bedside. And so I did. And I said, well, what next? He said, well, just do that and the healing will begin. And I wrote things down about, that family members had said to me, people in the past had done to me. Beyond that, I wrote down everything I had a grudge about life, about me, the way I am, about the hand that I've been dealt, all kinds of messages. Oh, I'm too skinny. I don't know how to swim. I didn't get blue eyes like my sister did. Why do I have this pain or that pain? Why don't I own a house anymore? Everything I blame myself for. I was thinking, gosh, I was such a jerk in the past. I should have done this. I should have done this. And I shouldn't have done that. And I failed to do X, Y, or Z. And the list goes on and on. And my friend says writing down all these things is a first step, but it's not a place to stay, that you will, just by unburdening these things and being willing to address them, is a great start. And it demonstrates where you have been in victim mode, because it brings up all these victim mode thoughts and ideas that you swept under the carpet, thinking that they're just going to go away on their own. Speaking of victim mode, you may remember, or for those of you in Namaste Group who are now reading Spiritual Liberation by Michael Beckwith, he talks about the evolution of our consciousness through 4 phases. The first phase is a place where we don't want to be. It's a stage of our journey called to me, right? The next steps being by me, through me, and as me, right? But when you're stuck in this to me stage, it's the same as saying, why me? Why me? There's even a book called Why Me? And you're thinking about life happening to me, and you're taking away your power as an actor and a creator by making yourself a victim. So this victim mode is deep seated, and it's really part of a belief. Victim mode survives when we think we can be separate from God, and that we have to pay a debt, or that we've been handed a certain lot in life because we may be a victim of destiny. So all the things I wrote down in my journal are from that first stage that Michael Beckwith talks about, that to me, why me stage. Life is happening to me, and I'm the victim. And in order to transcend the victim stage, we've got to get to forgiveness somehow. Michael Beckwith, in the Spiritual Liberation book, he also says, let me find it here. He says, the resistance, let me back up. He says, spiritually evolved people rush to be the first to forgive. Spiritually evolved people rush to be the first to forgive. And he further says that the resistance to forgiving is an attachment to the need to be right. So the power of forgiveness is liberating because it removes obstructions to the flow of good in our life. I think the same thing can be said of I'm sorry. Spiritually evolved people are perhaps the first to rush to say I'm sorry. And it's easy to think that, well, I don't need to say I'm sorry because it wasn't my fault. And my unforgiveness is not hurting me. So why do I need to do this forgiveness stuff? But sometimes we don't consciously realize that holding on to these resentments and sweeping this stuff under the rug is really harming us. It affects our whole consciousness because we're carrying this stuff around like a weight. It's a negative emotion that goes against everything that we teach in this philosophy about positive thinking. It has real consequences. After all, it's been said that forgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. You may have heard that phrase. And it's funny, I Googled that yesterday, and it attributes it to Marianne Williamson. It attributes it to someone named Joyce Byer, and it attributes it to another author as well. But this saying has gone around a lot. Unforgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. And isn't forgiveness really attached to the past? So unforgiveness means that you're staying in the past. And to that point, Debbie Ford said that in that 21-day consciousness cleanse book, she said, you have to be released from the toxic poison of your mind so you can be free to transcend the limitations of your past. Someone texted me this morning right along that same vein and said, forgiveness is getting your future back. Forgiveness is getting your future back. Isn't that wonderful? I love that. But where do we start? It's easy to tell someone else, hey, you've got to let that go. You just got to let that go. But when it's our stuff, it's not so easy because for some reason we have an attachment onto these things, maybe associated with the I'm right, or maybe associated with, the world is happening to me. It's not my fault. I have no responsibility. Louise Hay, I got a lot of quotes today. Louise Hay said, to release the past, we must first be willing to forgive. So that's the first step right there, willingness. To release the past, we must first be willing to forgive. We need to choose to release the past and forgive everyone. That's pretty radical. Forgive everyone, ourselves included. We may not know how to forgive, and we may not want to forgive. But the very fact that we say we are willing to forgive begins the healing process. So let's just say aloud together, or silently if you're more comfortable. Let's just say, I'm willing to forgive. So repeat after me. I'm willing to forgive. And in the spirit of Mark Mesidorian, for those of you who may have attended his workshop or not, say, I'm willing to forgive everyone 1%. I'm willing to forgive everyone 1%, just 1%. And feel that in your body. Last night when I read this, it made me tense up. I felt it in my stomach, and I had to relieve, I had to breathe from my stomach just to let go of that tension. And Mark Mesidorian would also say, I'm willing to forgive, and say this, I'm willing to forgive everything 1%. I'm willing to forgive everything 1%. And breathe. And maybe I'm willing to look at forgiveness. I'm willing to look at forgiveness. And imagine how it would feel if you had no one to forgive, including yourself. Imagine having done all that work and you now have created a clean slate where there's no one to forgive because you've done that work. Now, some say this could be a lifetime of work or not. It's up to you. But I love that thought about freeing whatever that is. And to me, for me, it kind of sits in my stomach, because it's a place, the stomach is kind of like your chakra, your power place where that sits. And for some of you, you may feel it in your heart. And that forgiveness includes yourself. In fact, I think that the best strategy for forgiveness is starting with yourself. Because who doesn't want, well, I'll rephrase that. I would say it's much more likely that you want to forgive yourself than it is maybe someone that you're not forgiving in your life. Because I think that forgiving yourself is inherently an act of self-love, to let ourselves off the hook. And this can be a continual process every day. The very popular Unity author Eric Butterworth reminds us of the teachings of Jesus, in essence, being that you can be healed no matter what you have done. May seem like a radical idea. You can be healed no matter what you have done, no matter who you are. The promise of healing is there as long as you see the truth. And he goes on to say, there is no law of retribution in God. And he draws the distinction between, this is one of the important distinctions, when we say all religions are the same, this is, they are, Ernest Holmes and the Fillmores took what was common between the religions and united it together. But there are some interesting differences where in Hinduism and Buddhism, you may believe that you're paying a karmic debt. And in Christianity and in New Thought and in this movement, there is no judging God. There is no law of retribution in God. When we enter into the Spirit, according to Eric Butterworth, we are free. Our debt is canceled. All is forgiven with nothing to forgive. So it's not the God of the Old Testament that was jealous and smite somebody and sent somebody to hell. This is the God that the Bible very much evolved in its thinking about God, such that God became a loving, unconditional, loving force by definition. So when we grab onto that definition, how can we not forgive ourselves knowing that we've already been forgiven? Charles Fillmore, one of the founders of our movement, said, we must get rid of the idea that God punishes man in any way. Remember, we at one point, I'm hoping that most people in this room gave up the belief in hell, right? And that God was waiting to like send us to an eternal, fire of damnation, right? That TV show Lucifer is not true. um, and that's one of the most liberating things about having made the conscious choice to believe in this modern day, spirituality called unity. And so if God doesn't punish man, why should we punish ourselves? Why should we punish others? So I want to begin to wind up the talk by coming back to the idea of forgiving others, recognizing that we all want to forgive ourselves, but what about forgiving others? And there is another helpful quote by Debbie Ford. She said, "You must give up all of your old ways of thinking, being, acting, and behaving. You must give up all your old ways of thinking, acting, being, and behaving in order for new patterns to emerge in your life. And you cannot do this until you release your ties to those who have harmed you, left you, deceived you, or hurt you in any other way." When Jesus was asked, how often should we forgive? And I know that those who have studied the Bible deeply, like I know Denise would know this, someone asked Jesus, how much should we forgive? 7 times? And his response was, not 7 times, but I tell you, 70 times 7. That was symbolic for we need to always be forgiving, right? And I think what that means is we need to not think of forgiving as like line items. I forgave that person. I forgave that person. Maybe it starts there. But what about new things that happen in your life? What about the neighbors who were going to play basketball and, before service here, I could have unforgiveness. I think what I'm saying is forgiveness needs to be a state of consciousness, because things could happen every day that goes right back into that well, right back under that carpet, right into that resentful state. And it holds us back. So finally, I want to mention, and this could be a whole talk in itself, and it was going to be, there's a book called Radical Forgiveness by Colin Tipping. And this is quite a deep book, but it's actually a really engaging read. It's easy to read. And he calls the book Radical Forgiveness because he talks about forgiveness in this idea of a consciousness of forgiveness. And in fact, he talks about forgiveness being something that we have drawn into our lives as an opportunity. So these hurts, these things that have happened to us, whatever things that need to be forgiven, we attracted, or they were given to us for our benefit, for our healing, because we need the transformative power of forgiveness in our lives. That may be hard to accept. That's why he calls it radical forgiveness, okay? That can incite anger for people who really want to hold on to forgiveness or unforgiveness. So I recommend this book as a follow-up. And once again, his message is essentially that when we do the work of forgiveness, our lives are forever transformed, because we're not just forgiving one at a time. We are creating a consciousness of forgiveness. And I see there in the chat. Okay, thanks, Chris, for noting that in the chat. I wanted to actually end with a quote from page XIV, early in the book of Colin Tipping's. And he says, "For eons, we have played out our victimhood in every aspect of our lives, convincing ourselves that victim consciousness is absolutely fundamental to the human condition. But the time has come to ask ourselves, how can we stop creating our lives in this way, how can we let go of the victim archetype as the model for how to live? To break free from such a powerful archetype and the grip it has on us, we must replace it with something radically different, something so compelling and so spiritually liberating that it magnetizes us away from victimhood. And that is the consciousness of forgiveness. So let's take a moment to pray together. How good it is to know that we have this opportunity to transform through forgiveness and radical forgiveness. Knowing that we can never be separated from God, knowing that we are already forgiven with nothing to forgive. There is no debt we have to pay. Because the truth is, we have the transformative power to truly set us free, following the example of Jesus the Christ. I'm willing to let this transformation happen right now in my life, even if I have to begin with only 1%. So today I begin to see the world through new eyes when I just say, I'm willing, I'm willing. Today I walk through the open door when I say to myself, I'm deserving, I'm worthy. My life is waiting for me to take these next steps now. So I say, I forgive me. I say, I forgive me. I say, I'm ready for this change. I'm ready for my change right now. And so it is.
I'm tired of the guilt that brings me pain. Now's the time for me to let go of the shame, the past behind me. I see anew. I'm ready for my change. Oh, yes, I am. I'm ready for my change. I forgive me. I forgive me. Everything that I've been holding on to, I let go. I surrender. I surrender. Yeah. I'm ready for my change. Oh, yes, I am. I'm ready for my change. I forgive them. I forgive them. Everything that I've been holding on to, I let go. I surrender. Yes, I surrender. I'm ready for my change. Oh, yes, I am. I'm ready for my change. I'm ready for my change. Oh, I'm ready for my change.
And so just continuing in the beautiful feeling tone that Denise and Margot have set, we just take a few moments to go within, to commune in the silence together. So just beginning by allowing your eyes to close, if that feels comfortable for you. And we'll take a few moments to just notice the natural rhythm of our breath. Notice that movement that is always moving you, whether we think about it or not, and that is so unique to you. unlike anyone else. And we just tune into the natural rhythm of our breath and simply allowing ourselves to observe without trying to change anything, just noticing. And maybe you notice where you feel your breath in your body. Do you feel your breath in your belly or in your chest, your back, maybe even your head? Where do you feel your breath in your body? And maybe noticing that moment of stillness after you exhale, before the next inhale, that natural moment of pause before we begin the next movement. And so during the meditation this afternoon, just allow yourself to use any aspect of your breath as an anchor point. That as you become aware that you may be in the future or in the past or involved in a story or thought that is not present, you lovingly guide yourself back to some aspect of your breath. And we just do this over and over again as many times as we need to with unconditional love for ourselves. As we have chosen to come together today to take this time to be in the presence of the Spirit within, the Spirit all around us, the one life. And so we take these few moments of stillness to connect to that place within ourselves that is untouched by outside experience, circumstance, history, future. That place within ourselves that is always eternal and always calling us to be our greatest yet to be. And so we just allow for a few moments in this space, this stillness, this quiet arena of love. With every breath, we feel ourselves pull deeper and deeper into the eternal spirit of love that is our life. No matter what is going on, we just allow ourselves to be exactly as we are right now. Just experiencing whatever is around you, whatever is within you. And so as we begin to close out this moment of stillness, this moment of pause, you just once again notice that natural rhythm that is moving us always, that natural rhythm of our breath that we can always come back to. We take a moment to open our hearts to gratitude for this practice, this time together, and this community. We'll take a full breath in together. And easily exhale out. And then as you're ready, you can allow your eyes to open and bring your vision back into this community, this space.